This is County Executive Warren Evans, and this is Inside Wayne County.
Hello and welcome to Inside Wayne County. I'm your host, Lloyd Jackson, and with this show, we want to give you important information and also keep you informed about what's going on inside Wayne County government. Today, we go inside the Wayne County Prosecutor's office, where the mission statement is to pursue justice, safeguard the community by demanding accountability for those who commit crimes, and to enhance the quality of life by changing the culture of violence. Wayne County Prosecutor Kym Worthy is working hard to keep that mission statement a reality and joins me now on this edition of Inside Wayne County. Madam Prosecutor, thanks for taking some time out to be with us.
My pleasure.
Before we get into the workings of the prosecutor's office, I always like to kind of introduce the guest to the residents of Wayne County. So let's find out who Kym Worthy is. Talk about your education.
Went to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, go blue, and I graduated from the University of Notre Dame School of Law. And so that's my educational background. I came here right after law school. My family was here, and I had never lived here before.
Wow.
My first foray into Michigan was when I went to college here.
Okay.
Because my father was a West Pointer, and his residency was the state of Michigan, but I had never lived here. And so because we moved every 1 or 2 years throughout my entire life. And so he told me when I was applying to colleges that I had two choices, Michigan or Michigan State. So got in both schools and chose Michigan. And that was my first day living in the state.
When did you know that you wanted to go into the law part of?
Wanted to be a lawyer since middle school. I don't know why. I didn't have any role model, people in my family. It's not as if you saw black lawyers on TV at the time.
No, that's right.
And so, but it's just something I always knew I wanted to do for whatever reason. It's a question I really can't answer because I don't know. It's just something that always was in my head since the 6th grade.
When did you start in the prosecutor's office?
I started in the prosecutor's office in the mid-'80s after I graduated from law school. Mm-hmm. And I started as a contract person in the juvenile division. And I was there for about 2.5 years on contract because there was a hiring freeze at the time.
Okay.
And finally, when I got hired as an assistant prosecuting attorney one, I went over to Recorder's Court. It was called Recorder's Court at the time.
At that time, yes.
And that was in '86. And so been with the prosecutor's office until August of 2003. Mm-hmm. And until 1994, because I became a Recorder's Court judge in 1995.
That's right.
And I was on the bench until August of 2003.
And that's when you became?
I became the prosecutor in January of 2004.
Now you worked under John O'Hare.
Yes.
In the prosecutor's office. How much of an influence was he on your?
A huge influence. You go to a dictionary and you look up the word integrity or honesty or doing the right thing or morality, and his picture is there in all those places. And he taught us that, public service was the most preeminent thing, that it was the best thing you could ever do with your life and your career, and I agree. And he also taught us what it was to be a real prosecutor, an honest and a just prosecutor, assistant prosecutor at the time. Mm-hmm. And so certainly I learned from him, and between he and my father, who were very similar men, it formed who I was today in terms of how I should be in the workplace.
Now, when we talk about the prosecutor's office, the day-to-day workings of the prosecutor's office, talk a little bit about that. There are several different divisions as well.
How it should be or how it is?
How it is.
Well, with the new CEO has come in, he's certainly given a new life to what public service is and what public safety is and how preeminent that is. That hasn't always been the case, though, and it just wasn't the case. And so we are the lowest funded in the country. Other offices use us as an example as how not to fund, and thankfully that's changing because Warren Evans does not have that philosophy. It is not like it is on TV where you have a detective on a show or two detectives on a show who works a case the whole hour, and then you have two prosecutors who work one case for a whole episode.
So it's not like Law and Order in prosecution?
Law and Order is a very beautifully written show and very smartly written, but it's not the reality of how a large city DA's office is run.
Okay.
And so we're horribly understaffed. We don't get to prepare our cases the way we'd like. Most large offices of our size, of our county size, they have 2 or 3 prosecutors assigned to a courtroom. We barely have one. We are partially staffed with law students and interns and volunteers. And so hopefully, that is changing. I know the county has its issues that the executive is working on. But I have to say, He endorses all the time that he wants our office to be funded the way it should be. And so it's very hectic, it's very busy. We're backed up 2,000 warrants. There's all kinds of issues we're having, but I have to say that I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
You have some great assistant prosecutors over there as well.
Well, I had. You know, ours, I feel like sometimes I'm the biggest training agent for the state because when you come, everybody wants to come. When you come, you get trained very well, you get trained quickly. You have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be able to be prepared and go to court if you can. And so when you're there 1, 2, 3 years, you can try 1 or 2 years really, you can try any case that comes by, just about. And so we have our contiguous counties taking our prosecutors all the time, the feds. And the interesting thing is when people leave our office, they leave to be a prosecutor someplace else because they're paid better and respected more and that kind of thing. So it's a situation that, again, that I'm working on with the CEO. He understands the importance of being able to attract and retain, because you can't have people leaving just when they get experience to do the serious crime that we see every day. And so he gets that, he got it right away, and that's refreshing.
You know, crime crosses all boundaries and counties as well. Do you ever speak or work with your counterparts in Oakland and Macomb County on cases?
No.
Or projects?
No, not really. I work with the federal government, with Barb McQuaid in the U.S. Attorney's Office on a number of projects, but I don't work with my colleagues in the contiguous counties. I do work with the Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan, which is our statewide organization. I was the president of the organization last year, and we work on a number of issues collectively, whether it's legislative issues or legislative issues or legal issues or things that need to be changed, things that need to be rescinded, policy decisions that we have to make as an organization statewide. They're working with me and have worked with me on the rape kits. And there are a number of policies and procedures that we're looking at, but we work very, very heavily in the legislature as well, crafting laws as they should be, changing ones that should be changed, and actually, frankly, dealing with the ones that should be obsolete. So we do a lot, and we're trying to work with it's difficult, with the Department of Corrections and their issues and how they should approach things when it comes to prosecutors sending people to our state prisons.
Crime also crosses color boundaries and ethnicities and status as well. And
Yes.
you've never been one to back down from high-profile cases when it comes to a charging decision.
You can't.
What's your philosophy on
You
that?
can't, because the minute that you do that, the minute you let public opinion or protest or signs or nasty emails or positive emails or phone calls or anybody trying to direct what you do when it comes to any case, I don't care if it's a case involving a police officer, a case involving an elected official, a case involving a lawyer, or a case involving anybody. You cannot let anything other than the facts and evidence direct you. The minute that you do, you need to quit. And you can't be scared or back away from criticism or praise either. So you can't believe the positive press or the negative press. When it comes to the charging of cases, it must be done by the facts and the evidence, and that's it.
When you fight crime, and I know, people talk about Detroit. Detroit has high crime, I'm sure the highest crime in Wayne County, but it's a team effort though, isn't it?
It's a team effort, and there are many cities across the county that have many bad crime issues as well.
Exactly.
It seems like every sector of the county has its own problems, just like we do in Detroit, because there's more people. But it's not just Detroit, it's the entire 43 cities, townships, and municipalities in Wayne County. And also what people don't know, we do an awful lot of work for the federal government. We work for, we process cases for all the alphabets, the FBI, the ICE, or the DEA, or ATF. We do a lot of work for them. We do a lot of their drug search warrants. We do Fed cases all the time when it comes to under a certain threshold. So we don't only deal with the 43 police agencies in Wayne County, but we deal all told with about 90 different police agencies that we deal with on a weekly or monthly basis.
When you deal with high-profile cases, some cases there's information that can't be released, and a lot of times the public wants information released because they want to know what's going on, but that information being released could jeopardize your case.
The first thing they think about is, they're trying to hide something. Or if we don't want a medical examiner's report released, or we don't want, we do a full investigation and a fair investigation and a thorough investigation when it comes to cases. When people in this instant gratification society want answers right away. For example, during the text message scandal, they said, well, the text messages were in the paper. Why isn't she charging? Because you have to do a full and fair investigation regardless of who the potential defendant may be. And even now, we probably receive the most pressure on police beating or police cases where police-involved deaths, because those are very, very hard to investigate. They're very, very hard to put together. And sometimes when we think we're nearing a decision, we get evidence or another source or another witness, and it leads us entire, not in another direction, but in a way that we have to go and get that evidence and gather and assess that evidence as well, along with what we have. So we do get a lot of pressure, but you know what? That pressure doesn't affect the way we do things. It just doesn't. You don't want to come in and see a protest in front of the courthouse, but at the end of the day, you're going to do the right thing regardless of what the consequences are, regardless of what people think, because almost every decision we make, someone's not going to like. And I learned that and honed that skill when I was on the bench for 9 years. Almost every decision you make, somebody wasn't going to like.
Of course.
And so, but you have to just let the evidence in. You have to be solely focused on what the evidence is and what you can prove by what the legal standards are. And if you do that, then you really will very rarely have major issues in terms of how you charge people and how it's done. Because really, people think from watching TV, for example, that the most important thing a prosecutor does is go to trial, and you see the trial on TV. And I guess maybe it would be boring to see the process leading up to the trial. But the most important function, in my view, that a prosecutor has is making sure the cases you put into the system are the right cases and you can prove under the facts and evidence. Even if we believe someone is guilty as sin, if we don't have the evidence to prove it and charge it, we can't do it. And so we try to be the best we can in making sure the right cases get into the system in the first place. The prosecutor is the gatekeeper to the criminal justice system. The only way a case that gets into the system is for a prosecutor to review it. And here in Wayne County, at least, I can't speak for anybody else, we're going to do it the right way, regardless of, say, oh, you're moving too slow or whatever. And so you make decisions, and bad decisions, when you do things, take shortcuts and everything like that. And we also, as much as we respect the police departments and the police authorities that we work with every day, we're not going to automatically rubber stamp everything that they bring through the door.
Because there have been times that you've sent
we send things back
and say more investigation.
It happens frequently, and it's no indictment on them. It's just that we know what we have to be able to prove a successful case in court, and to make sure, because a prosecutor's function is twofold. It sounds strange, but we're also responsible for the civil rights of the defendant. We don't just represent the victim and the people of the state of Michigan, all of the people of the state of Michigan, but we also have to ensure, by our canons of ethics, that we uphold the due process rights of the defendants. So that's another reason we want to make sure that we do things the right way.
The criminal justice system, you were talking about that, and there's been talk about the fact that it needs to be overhauled. What's your thought on that? Does it need to be overhauled?
I think there are certainly issues. I think it never hurts to look at the issue, and I don't know about overhaul, but there's certainly some changes that need to be made in many parts of the criminal justice system. I will not back away from that. I endorse what's going on, but at the same time, I want to make sure that, because prosecutors are always, even though we're the gatekeepers, we're always the last thing people think about. We're kind of like the stepchild in a way, because we talk about indigent defense, and that's something we should talk about, indigent defense. But prosecutors are generally not well funded either. And so if they want us to be able to properly carry out our mandated constitutional duties in the right way, we have to have the resources too. Because there's no prosecutor that I know that enjoys having a case that they charge be dismissed or overturned because of there's other evidence out there. We want to be able to, at any opportunity, at the earliest opportunity, have the investigative tools and the staff to look at cases very well. So when you're able to do that, then less mistakes are made. And so I endorse that they want to look at it, but at the same time, we want to make sure that they look at all aspects and realize that prosecutors across this country are woefully underfunded. And if we're funded properly, some of the mistakes, the criminal justice mistakes that are made sometimes would not be made if we were funded properly.
It seems to be a culture of violence across the country in a lot of urban areas. How do you change that?
Urban and suburban, but yeah. I've been talking about this for, 12 years or 11 years, about that we have to change the culture of violence, because, we have been locking people up for time immemorial, and we still have a huge crime issue. So if that worked, and that was the end-all be-all, then we wouldn't have a crime problem. So obviously, you have to look at criminal justice from different areas. Obviously, there are people, violent felons, that they deserve to be in prison for a very long time, and some deserve never to come out, depending on what they do. A lot of people, though, if they are sent to prison, they deserve a chance to try to get out and better their lives and have a fighting chance at success when they get out. And then there are some that belong on probation, but even our probation officers are underfunded as well, and they can't supervise as well as they need to, and even parole officers too. So yes, the whole thing needs to be looked at, but we need to be able to send violent felons to prison for a very long time, but we also have to be able to have discretionary sentences for people who don't deserve to be in prison for their entire lives based on what they did. And there's a misnomer. People think, oh, there's all these drug offenses in prison. That's just patently not true.
Okay.
First of all, you had to have several cases, at least in Wayne County, to even go to prison in the first place on many cases. But secondly, the only way basically they're in prison on a drug offense is if they have violent crimes in their past. So they may be in prison for a drug offense, but they have a second-degree murder, or they have an armed robbery, or child molestation, or home invasions in their past that lead a judge to be able to put them in prison for a long time. So people are not in prison, in this state anyway, for just minor drug offenses. It's just not true.
What about this no snitch rule? How does that complicate what you're trying to do as far as getting the right information to get a conviction on a crime?
That's a huge, 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 huge issue. I cannot emphasize how that is, because we have so many cases that unsolved cold cases of whatever kind, homicides, everything, because people just don't want to come forward. And it's a legitimate concern, and we understand how some people are just afraid to come forward for fear of retribution. Some people don't do it because of the whole, they're not going to do it, they're not afraid, they just don't want to do it because of the whole thing about being known as a snitch. It's a huge, huge issue. So we've been pretty successful over the years. Not the first few years I was here, but pretty successful over the years getting witness protection money and witness protection issue. And now we have a huge assist. We could not do it right now because of the finances, without the Detroit Crime Commission, who has I think it's called Safeguard program that deals with witness protection issues, and we rely on them very heavily for that as well from time to time. Sometimes we can call them at 4 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, because prosecutors don't work from 8 to 5. Sometimes the only way you can find your witness or have time to talk to your witness is because you've been there, all day in court, is at night, or and sometimes a crime will happen and the police will call you at 4 o'clock in the morning. We have this witness that doesn't want to cooperate or is fearful to go back or something like that. We have to deal with that, and so that happens frequently. So this is, for anybody thinking about being a prosecutor, it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's a job that's, I remember when I was an assistant, I used to spend the weekends and literally come to work on Friday morning, and I would be going home on Sunday evening to change, shower, and come back to work especially if I was in trial or preparing for a high-profile trial. So and that's why the money that we're paid here in Wayne County is paltry. We're very, very lowly paid, and that's something else that I've talked to the CEOs about as well. We have to be able to retain people that we train, so they won't go away.
Talk to you about an initiative that you've just been all over, which is the rape kits, and how that came about, how that come to your attention. And I know you got Mariska Hargitay. We talked about Law and Order. She was here for a little while talking about it.
A huge ally, and we wouldn't be this far without her and her Joyful Heart Foundation. But I found out about in August of '09, and that we had over 11,000 untested rape kits that were there. And I thought immediately that we have to, and the people of the state of Michigan doesn't say for one segment of people. It doesn't say for if your crime happened during a certain time, because clearly if these have been homicides, nobody would be talking about having a voice for cold case homicide victims whose family members were murdered and it wasn't solved, in it's 30-year-old case, 20-year-old case, 10-year-old case, 5-year-old case. But it's been difficult at times with these rape kits. But I tell you, this is a very philanthropic region. I think for the first time we have all of the players in place that you need to help this problem and the general problem with public safety in Wayne County. Anyone that tells you that one person can do it all is lying. You have to have political figures or elected officials in place at every bend and turn, at every space to work together. And now we have, I think, a mayor who's very serious about it. Certainly a CEO who's brought attention to this matter, and who one of his tenets, I think, I can safely say, is to have a safe Wayne County. How public safety is important, because he's a law enforcement guy, which makes it all the more refreshing. And then I think the commissioners are coming on board, hopefully, knock on wood. And certainly the governor's office, who's always been very supportive of my office, and others. I think we finally have the right people in place and the whole spectrum of things that we can make these differences. And so everybody's come on board with this. And so we are now up to, as of the end of June, we've identified over 450 serial rapists, and we're not even done with all the testing. We have over 2,200 CODIS hits, And the bad thing right now is that we have over 600 cases where we have CODIS hits, that's DNA hits, that are waiting to be investigated because we don't have the resources to have all the investigators that we need. We're working on that with Enough Said Detroit, with the Michigan Women's Foundation and Andy Arena and the Detroit Crime Commission to raise funding for that, because we desperately need the money to hire the investigators and the prosecutors to prosecute these cases, because they still have to be investigated. You don't get a CODIS hit and can go in charge. You still have to have a complete and thorough investigation, because most of these cases were not investigated in the first place. And so that takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money, and hopefully we can get this done in the next 3 to 5 years. So over 450 people who raped more than once, and even a more staggering statistic than that, and that's pretty staggering, these CODIS hits in these cases have tentacles in 32 other states.
Wow, yeah.
Some of them other sexual assaults in other states, some of them homicides, some of them other crimes as well. So our rape kits here in one city, in one county, in one state have affected 31, because 32, Michigan's one of them, 31 other jurisdictions and the District of Columbia. And so this is not a Detroit-only problem. They have these untested kits all over the country and even outside this country. And so I didn't think for a minute that we could ignore it. We have to bring justice to these victims as soon as we can, and whatever it takes, because the former CEO, not the current one, the former CEO's attitude was that I shouldn't be wasting my time. He said that in writing. I shouldn't be wasting my time on these abandoned rape kits.
Wow.
And the last time I checked, that rape was a violent crime.
Yes, it was.
I call it the stepchild of violent crime because it doesn't get the respect that it deserves, even though it's a crime where someone's violated in the most intimate of ways. And we ought to be turning over stones. We ought to be doing every single thing that we can to make sure justice is brought to these women. These kids go back almost 35 years now. And so we are knocking on doors of victims who were victimized 20 years ago. And so no wonder people have lost faith in the criminal justice system. So what we want to do is we want people to know that we're working on this hard and that we have put things in place so this won't happen again in Wayne County. And we want people to have a renewed faith in the criminal justice system, because this is already a crime that most women and men and children don't report, and this doesn't help. So, but I think what it does help is when they see a collaborative effort, led by our office certainly, but a collaborative effort to get this done to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Final question, been a lot of talk that possibly you may be looking for a higher office. Can you say that you're going to retire as the Wayne County Prosecutor?
It's funny. People always think that and I don't even like to call myself a politician, but I guess I am because I had to be elected, but every politician has an agenda, and every job is a stepping stone, and you do this for this reason and this agenda. And that's just not how I feel about things. I know that I could go on and maybe run for some of these other, but I am not interested at this point. I'll be retiring at some point from working, period, going to a job. I'm a mother with 3 kids, so I'm never going to retire.
Right.
And I have 2 6-year-olds and a daughter who just graduated from high school, so I'm forever a mother, but very busy. And then I have community activities that I'm involved with and foundations that I'm on the board for, and so I keep very busy. But I'll retire probably in 8 or 9 years or so, but I'm going to be around for quite a while longer.
All right. Well,
not going anywhere anytime soon.
Madam Prosecutor, thank you so much for joining us.
Got to solve the problems we have, yeah.
Wayne County, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Stay tuned for upcoming shows as I take you inside Wayne County departments and introduce you to the people in charge and the many services they provide. It's all with the goal of keeping you up to date on everything going on inside Wayne County. I'm Lloyd Jackson. See you next time.